Monday night, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And yes, I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and your number one source for strong, fearless, independent journalism right here in Hudson County. Certainly, folks, I'll continue to be the hero you need right now because as the establishment media here in the state of New Jersey continues to lie to you every single day, guess who won't? That's right, me, Fernando, Uribe. Happy Monday to all of you. Hope you had a wonderful Independence Day weekend. I know I did down in Hoboken. Look at the fireworks, having some good food, having some drinks with friends, and just really remembering why the 249th birthday of our United States is so special as we approach, obviously, 250 years next summer. But certainly, I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on Facebook Live via StreamYard, also on the Jersey First YouTube page, as well as all of our social media platforms. And speaking of which, if you haven't done so already, do me a favor. Make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and X. Don't forget to subscribe to Jersey First TV on YouTube. Of course, like, comment, and share tonight's episode on all your social media. And of course, whether you listen to podcasts on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First and take it with you, whether you're driving down on Mondays for Tiki Mondays down in Point Pleasant, whether you're going food shopping, walking the dog. I'm pretty sure you have your smartphone on or with you. Guess what? Take Jersey First TV with you anywhere at any time and enjoy the great programming we bring you every single week. Folks, I can't say enough really about what a privilege it is to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, folks. It is Jersey First TV. Of course, always educating and advocating for the residents of our great state here in New Jersey. Brand new episodes of The Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, hosted by my outstanding tag team partner, the great Elizabeth Nader. And of course, brand new episodes of Real Talk premiere every Monday night. Check your local listings, of course, for start times here on the Jersey First Television Network. Folks, you want to stick around for final thoughts? I have a lot to say after the very, very sort of eventful week here in the life of Fernando Uribe. But certainly, let's dive in a little bit more into, obviously, quite frankly, the great traffic that we have here on the program. And despite whatever negative attention Real Talk with Fernando Uribe apparently received, didn't really do any harm, folks. Again, over 59,000 views, all organic, folks, on Facebook, on X, and all of our social media platforms for the month of June. I mean, are you really surprised? People watch the show. And even the haters who can't, help themselves, they still tune in because they can't help, they can't help it. I live rent-free in a lot of heads in Hudson County. Trust me, folks, when I tell you that. But I want to thank everyone who made that number possible again in the month of June as we continue with strong traffic here on the Jersey First Television Network. And of course, folks, some of the great traffic at the end of June was due to large in part to this insufferable human. Yes, folks, as you can see there, yes, you can smell the stink of cat piss just by looking at this picture. Yes, I'll have more to say about Kayla Burrell, a local activist in Jersey City, as she started quite a hoopla last week, obviously, as you all know. For anyone that follows HUDpost, whether it's on their website, whether it's on their social media, Facebook, Instagram, and X, of course, a feature column was posted last week, of course. I mean, obviously, you know who that handsome gentleman is right there, obviously. And I'll have a lot to say about this article that was published last week on the HUDpost main homepage, of course, on all of its social media platforms. And I'll kind of tell you what they got right and what they got wrong last week on this article. Again, shout out to HUDpost. They continue to do great work. Don't have a bad word to say about James De Los Santos. It'd be nice if you return a call once in a while, but keep up the good work, James. Again, HUDpost continues to be a great news source here in Hudson County. But I'll tell you a little bit about what didn't sit well with me about last week's article. Trust me, it got me a lot of new followers, got me traffic, so can't really complain. But I'll tell you exactly, folks, what's disappointing about columns like this. And it's really the commentary that, came of it. Not just on Facebook, but on Twitter, also on Instagram, and of course, insufferable humans that felt the need to opine and drop some really vile comments. Of course, you people who don't really like me, in Hudson County, like, for example, Amy Wilson, of course, another insufferable in Jersey City, as you can see there. Good to know that Amy will be leaving Jersey City soon. Of course, as you can see there, she'll be taking Dwight from the office as she heads out to the Midwest. Good riddance. Amy, I speak on behalf of many people in Jersey City that have reached out to me. Trust me, I'm not the only one that's glad to see you go. But a little bit more about Amy Wilson later. And really, it's interesting because it's not even so much the comments during last week's publication on HuffPost, but it's who likes the vile comments. And it tells you a lot about the type of people they are when they're liking vile comments. And of course, I think of Amy Wilson, and I'll start with her a little bit later on during Final Thoughts, as well as everybody else who seemed to have a lot to say about Fernando Uribe. Of course, as you can see there, local resident, Justin Rivera. And, I thought Donnie Azoff in The Wolf of Wall Street was the only one that married his cousin, but I guess Justin Rivera apparently does the same. A little bit more about Justin and what he got wrong in his commentary last week about yours truly, what he continues to get wrong on a consistent basis. But, we'll talk a little bit more about these haters online, as well as also Stuart Thomas, the main campaign manager for the James Solomon for Mayor campaign in Jersey City. And just to give you a little pretext, folks, obviously this week we were supposed to have a mayoral forum in downtown Jersey City at the 626 Lounge. Now, as you know from watching last week's episode and my op-ed that I submitted to the Hudson County Chronicles, and of course, which was also published on HuffPost, I gave you a pretty good chronology of the events. And what was interesting is that, for weeks, as myself and John Hines were coordinating with candidates, not a peep from people like Stuart Thomas. But Stuart, again, maybe you've heard of it, like smartphones and text messages. Yeah, I have the receipts, and I'll tell you why Stuart Thomas is full of shit. Like a lot of other operatives who are just, let's be honest, are just out there to get a check. But more on Stewie later during Final Thoughts. You definitely, folks, don't want to miss that. Get your popcorn ready as I eviscerate all these idiots in Hudson County later on tonight. But folks, again, it is an election season, and certainly there's a lot to talk about in Hudson County politics. And, of course, we have mayoral races in Hoboken, Jersey City, Secaucus, Guttenberg, and also in West Hudson in Kearney, New Jersey. And why not talk to a fellow journalist who's really plugged into what's going on in the township of Kearney, of course, and the nearby municipalities. He's the editor-in-chief of the Observer newspaper over in Kearney, folks. He's my good friend and apparently a big fan of the show, as I'm a fan of his. He's Kevin Canessa, joins us live right now on Real Talk. Kevin, how are you?
Fernando, to be with you a week after Jim McGreevey, I could not be asking for more. So I really appreciate you having me today, and I'm looking forward to our talk today.
Well, listen, man, I get the exclusives. People want to hate on me all they want, but, it's real traffic because it's real talk here. You know what I'm saying? So the numbers don't lie. So
let them hate you as much as they want. That means you're doing it right.
They're still tuning in, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But again, Kevin, I do want to thank you. It's interesting, just a sort of a context here. I'm a big pro wrestling fan. And one of the interesting things being a pro wrestling fan is that there seems to be a lot of tribalism about how pro wrestling fans get their news and their gossip. And there happens to be a publication called the Wrestling Observer that gets vilified a lot. So when someone said to me, hey, who's your guest this week? I'm like, oh, it's Kevin Canessa from the Observer. And people were like, what? Dave Meltzer and Kevin? I'm like, no, it's not Dave Meltzer and Kevin Canessa. It's Kevin Canessa from the Observer newspaper. Don't get it twisted. So before I start getting all this vitriol from people, I'm like, it's actually a legit Observer as opposed to the Wrestling Observer online. So I appreciate your time, Kevin. As I alluded to during the monologue, obviously, it is an election season. We'll talk about some statewide races in a little bit later. But before we even get to what's going on in Kearney, your family has a long lineage and history with the Observer. Take us back in time as to sort of the origins of the Observer.
Well, the newspaper began actually in 1887. In fact, it started on May 14th, 1887. So we're in our 138th year. And it started out as a single-page broadsheet that had very, very little by way of news. There was a lot of advertising and things of that nature. And then it kind of morphed into what it has become today. But it's been a staple in West Hudson since that beginning back in 1887. And one of the reasons we've been able to survive going back all those years is because we had a former owner. His name was Anthony Tortoretti. The newspaper is now owned by his daughter, Lisa, and he had a lot of foresight when others didn't. He believed in technology. He believed in the need to go to the web when others were just stuck in print. And that's how, even to this day, we've been able to do as well as we have for all these years, fortunately. But for 138 years, we've been there, and we've been keeping our eyes on a lot of what goes on in Kearney and other parts of the area that we cover too.
No, listen, it's a great publication. I like to look at it quite regularly when I can as I'm browsing different news sites because it's as you're doing homework, obviously, for your show, as I'm doing homework for my show. I mean, there's only just so much time in a day to look at everything. And I like to look at local stuff as much as I like to look at statewide stuff because at the end of the day, all politics is local.
Yeah.
I think we can agree on that. And certainly there are important races this year, as I mentioned. And, let's dive into this mayoral race in Kearney. Seems to be very contentious lately. Obviously, the Mayor Doyle, obviously facing some challengers. Obviously, one of them was a guest on my show a few months back, Cindy Ferrara, excuse me. And I think it's, Kearney's become this sort of hotbed for, I think, issues that are going on in nearby municipalities, affordability, parking, the rents are too high, perhaps, the education in town. Let's sort of delve into that. It seems like people I talk to in Kearney, obviously you're more plugged in than I am. It seems to be that the word affordability is on everyone's mind. But let's be fair. I mean, is there a magic wand to really address this, though?
I wish there was, Fernando. But if you look, I hate to keep going back to our newspaper, but
sure, yeah, go ahead.
We have classified ads in the paper every week. And there are apartment rentals that at one point, I would say maybe even 5 years ago, were going for, let's say, $1,000 a month that are now going for $3,000 a month. And we're talking about basic homes. Now, there are a lot of other homes, too, that don't fit into that category that are new buildings where you would expect higher rents. You would expect that because there's many more amenities that come with these apartments. But we're talking about some of the basic 2-3 family homes now that are going for just astronomical rents. Is there a magic wand? I don't know. But the truth of the matter is, when you talk about the cost of living in West Hudson or South Bergen and in the different corners of the towns we cover, the rents that people are paying now are probably 3 times as much as they were maybe even 5 years ago. And I think that's a problem for anybody who is running a municipality because people at this point can't afford to live here. And that's a very big issue that I think Mayor Doyle and Sidney Ferrara are going to have to face when the election starts to heat up once we get into around September, because it's going to really face just about anybody who wants to live here. You just can't in many cases right now.
And it's interesting. I spoke with Mayor Al Santos years ago on this program, and he almost saw this on the horizon in the sense of development and what was going on and how attractive Kearney was becoming as a destination for people to live in. Again, and I know many of my viewers may be shocked at this, but yes, folks, Kearney and Harrison are in Hudson County. A lot of people don't think about that. I mean, I love going to Harrison, the new Mambo restaurant right by that brand new pass station. Kind of looks like the Death Star from Star Wars for any fans out there, I think, for anyone that looks at it. But, we think about Kearney, great academics at Kearney High School. Certainly, Kearney has become that attractive area to live in. If you can't live where I live in Union City or nearby Weehawken or West New York, it's a little too urban. Parking's a problem. We'll get to that in a minute with Kearney because I know that's a problem as well. And you're thinking, maybe I can't afford Secaucus. Oh, let me move out a little west. And sure enough, Harrison and Kearney specifically have become those destinations where people will say, well, you know what? I do want a little bit more of a suburban area, but I still want to be in Hudson County. I want to be near Manhattan. I want to be near the Turnpike. I want to be near the Parkway where everything's accessible. But, to no one's surprise, if there's a square inch to develop, developers are going to sniff it out. And it seems like they've started looking at Kearney as a gold mine. Kevin, is that fair to say?
It is, Fernando. And at some point, though, you have to realize that the space is going to run out. And there's just so much building that can be done. So here's why I say this. What my sense over the last couple of years has been is that because of developers like Ed Russo, who have built these Vermella buildings in Harrison, in Kearney, in other parts of the area, the fact that they are able to charge what they can charge for rent, which is understandable because these are buildings that have pools, they have gyms, they have elevators, things that you don't get in a normal home. they have unfortunately translated into that issue that we talked about. There is a gold mine in these new buildings, but it has transcended into other places in the town where in the past you might be able to say, hey, listen, I think this is a great place to live. The schools are great. The community is wonderful, but because of what has happened with some of this development, and I think it's even fair to say at this point, overdevelopment, it has driven up the cost to live in other parts of the towns that we cover here at the Observer. And because of that, that I think is an issue that's going to have to be addressed, not just now, but in the coming years, because if somebody doesn't take some kind of action, I hate to see what might come of it afterwards.
Folks, if you're just joining us live right now, it is 6:17 here on the East Coast, and my guest tonight is the distinguished editor of the Observer newspaper. Kevin Canessa joins us live here on Real Talk. Folks, drop a comment or a question there in the comment section. We'd love to hear from our audience as the traffic remains strong here on the Jersey First Television Network. Kevin, obviously affordability is a problem. Development, certainly parking is what I keep hearing from residents where, I mean, it's gotten so bad where, residents have to go into like nearby Harrison to park. And obviously that's not going to work out for them where they're getting tickets all over the place. And what are you hearing about the township and the current administration with Mayor Doyle and the town council? Because I'm sure they're getting it from all directions, from residents, from business owners. But once again, is there a magic wand we can wave when it comes to parking too?
Well, I think first, the most important thing to realize is that this has been going on for as long as I can remember. I moved here in 1985. My mother took us from Jersey City. We came here to Kearney. And since I got here, parking was an issue. So going way, way back, it was always very difficult to find some place to park. Fast forward to a couple of years ago, at least on the Kearney side, let me start with that. They had a series of meetings in all 4 wards of the town, and they were taking in the mayor and the council at the time. It was the former mayor, Peter Santana, who was running all of these meetings back then. They took as much input as they could from residents, and they really never came to a consensus. There was a time where they thought about a parking utility, and Mayor Doyle was against having a parking utility. And so here we are in 2025, 2 years after all these meetings in 4 wards, 2 times, and there really hasn't been much of a solution except in one spot, and that is in the 2nd ward of the town, where some of the streets now have permit parking. Has it helped? We don't know yet. We won't know, but it's a pilot program for 6 months. Let's see what happens, and then they'll go back and they'll readdress this. However, because of all of this, I think there are other neighborhoods where they're saying, well, listen, if they have these permits, we want them too. And I think at some point they're going to have to think about that, because especially if it works in this particular neighborhood in the 2nd ward, if it works there, perhaps it'll work elsewhere. But we're waiting to see. It's been about 2 months now, and once everything is over, it'll be interesting to see what the ultimate results are there. And you don't want to have to go into another town, but that's exactly what happens in the 1st ward in Kearney, that people are going into Harrison all the time.
It's the middle of July, and listen, political junkies like you and I, we're always paying attention, but a lot of residents aren't. And whether it's the statewide gubernatorial race or the 80 assembly seats, a lot of municipal races, it's first and foremost on our minds, but a lot of people don't start paying attention until after Labor Day. You want to enjoy the summer, you want to go day drinking, you want to go to the beach, you want to do a plethora of things, Kevin. But for people like you and I, we're paying attention to stuff consistently. Obviously, residents in Kearney are seeing this race between Mayor Doyle and her challenger, Cindy Ferrara, obviously as a very, very heated one. I might even say a fickle race, to say the least, for sure. Obviously, listen, let's call balls and strikes fairly. What would you say is the best part about what Mayor Doyle has been doing, and maybe some of the worst parts?
Some of the good things that she's done is that she's addressing things that were put off for a long time. Her predecessor, Al Santos, had opportunities to take action, but I think he put a lot of things off. That includes the water situation, where there's going to be an increase in water bills in the coming months and years. I think she has addressed some of the bigger issues, like fixing some of the roofs and some of the buildings that are in utter disrepair. The air conditioning at the town hall broke, and a couple of weeks ago at a council meeting, they were all sitting in a 100-degree council chamber. So she has addressed that. She's done some other things with public safety that have been very good, including the purchase of a mobile command center that just debuted on July 4th at the fireworks. So in many, many ways, she has been able to do some of the things that were put off for a long time, Fernando. And I think that was very, very unfortunate that Mayor Santos did that for so many years. The problem with this is that, and you and I talked about this off the air, optics means so much, and people are going to see my water bill's gone up. There's all these things that I'd like to get done. I'd like to see done, but they hadn't been done. And now it's the responsibility of the current administration. So for as much as there have been a lot of great things that have been done, there were so many things that are left off, but the optics make it look bad. They really do. And that's unfortunate right now, because I think a lot of the things that were put off that are being done now, it's going to be very, very costly.
Kevin, would you say, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, the accessibility by Mayor Doyle, in the sense of hearing, grievances from residents and at least trying to be prompt or accessible in trying to address these issues? How would you grade that?
I'm gonna talk to you on two levels here. If you ask that question of Sidney Ferreira, he's gonna say it's a 0 right away. And they have had issues with each other. They've argued at council meetings. They've argued outside the council chambers. When I need to talk to her, I hear from her immediately. She answers right away, whether it's a text message or a phone call. So I think depending on who you ask, you might get different answers to that question. And the reason why that is, I don't have the answer to the reason why, but I've always had a very easy time accessing her. She's everywhere. No matter how you feel about her, she is at every single town event. Even if there are 5 people there, she will be there. And if people go up to her and they want to talk to her, she will listen to them. What happens on the telephones, that's a different story. What happens with people who maybe don't like her, I don't know the answer to that. And I think it's important to realize that in many cases, these types of things do happen. When look at, I'll just take Sid for another example. The two of them are going to be locked into a very, very heated race, Fernando, in the next couple of months. And even though sometimes in the summer, things do slow down, it's already starting to pick up here. It really is. And the perception of what people think about what she's doing for others will vary depending on where you are and who you ask that question. But for me, it has always been, she's been very accessible. But if you ask Sid that same question, he's going to say absolutely not to the same question.
Now, in fairness, we look at the challenger now. Let's sort of grade the challenger. Obviously, what are some good things going for him, and what are some bad things going for him in the sense of his campaign platform?
I like Sid. I've known him for a couple of years now. When we first met, we didn't get along too well. We've had ups and downs, which I think happens with any local news agency and people who run for office. This will be the 4th time he runs for an office. He ran for mayor in 2021, 2023, and now 2025. There was a time when Al Santos retired, well, not retired, but left to go sit on the bench. And so there was an opening 2 years ago in the middle of a 4-year term. He has offered a lot of alternatives to what Mayor Doyle says, but I think at times he hasn't offered enough by way of specifics on what he would do. And that's fine because I think at some point he's going to have to offer a platform. But he has, he's always said something that I think impressed me that I never really believed in myself. And I would always ask him, "Why are you doing this again? You know, this is going to be the fourth time." And he said, "When you give up, that is when you lose." And that's why I think he has persistently done this in these subsequent elections, and why, if you look at last year's election in Kearney, I think he's going to have a much better showing than he did even 4 years ago or 2 years ago when he came in second place out of three candidates.
Now, what do you want to attribute that to in this sense? Again, we're still a few months away. There's no polling that I have access to. Maybe you do. I don't know.
No,
But at the end of the day, what do you attribute to Sidney perhaps closing that gap where he couldn't do that 4 years ago?
he was able to, I think, last year really ride off the coattails of Donald Trump's victory. In Kearney, Trump won by almost 300 votes, which I don't think has happened where a Republican presidential candidate has done as well as Trump did in Kearney in years that I can remember. I think he was able to really build on that in his own campaign.
Sure.
I think he will be able to build on that in his own campaign in 2025 because I'm not sure many people expected that Kearney would actually turn red last year, but it did by a significant margin. And I think he's banking on that in 2025, that he'll be able to have an equal showing the way Trump did just last year in November.
Now, it's interesting because obviously nearby municipalities in Hudson County got a lot redder. Obviously, Bayonne, North Bergen, Union City, West New York, Weehawken to some extent. I'm not sure about Harrison. I have to look at the numbers per se. I know Secaucus, the president did really, really well. But again, I think that was more of sort of a microcosm of like the whole state, obviously. And, you know, you and I are students of history, and certainly not since 1988 under George H.W. Bush did a Republican win New Jersey's 14 electoral votes. And,
Right.
of course, Donald Trump came really, really close within, I think, 4.5 points of doing that. Obviously, that was a byproduct of a lot of variables, which we'll get to a little bit because I think it has a lot to do with this year's gubernatorial race, which we'll cover in a bit. But back to Kearney, though, you know, Kevin, it's interesting because, you know, whether it's registering new voters, whether it's using social media, listen, I think it's fair to say we've been in this business for a while. I think we've seen the evolution of journalism, and certainly, you know, you have a print newspaper, which, you know, they've gone extinct in recent years, whether it's the Bergen Record, whether it's the Star Ledger, you name it, even here in Hudson County. I mean, the Jersey Journal, which was ultimately one of the staples in Hudson County for over 100 years, went out of business. And certainly, even going back, I mean, I might be showing my age here, but even going back to the days of the Hudson Dispatch.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, I'm a guy that loves reading the newspaper. I'm a sports guy, so I'm always reading the sports first, and then I work my way to the front of the newspaper. That's how I am. But obviously, you know, we're living in different times. We're using social media. Podcasting, like what I do, has changed journalism tremendously. Obviously, opinion journalism, I think, is the new wave of what's going on. But at the end of the day, the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes is local journalism, is a local paper. And, you know, it's really amazing what you've been able to do and stay consistent in this sort of business model. Take us a little bit through what maybe has been sort of maybe a painful evolution, some growing pains in the last decade or so. Because again, you know, we're only about 20 years into social media. Again, 20 years ago, Mark Zuckerberg was at Harvard, you know, developing the Facebook. And then subsequently we got YouTube that same year. A few years later, we got Twitter. Then we got Instagram. Then we got Snapchat. Subsequently, we've gotten TikTok in recent years. So being able to use social media, I would argue, has been a tremendous evolution for our business. But I mean, how much has it hurt really print newspapers at the local level?
It has been an incredible benefit for us. It is, I think, the reason we have used it well, that we're still alive while others are not, Fernando, because as I don't remember if I mentioned this to you on the air or off the air, but our former owner, Anthony Tortoretti, in 1996 registered theobserver.com. and he stuck with it. He believed it was going to be the wave of the future. And I think we both know that that's exactly what happened in reality when newspapers were still flourishing in 1994 and 1995. One of the great things that I've been able to do is similar to you, just not as much as there is some opinion to it, but there is still also a lot of hard news. We do this once a week on Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m. We go over the news, and sometimes I do opine on things that are going on in the area, especially if I need to call something out on from anybody who's involved in the towns we cover. But the thing that I get worried about the most, Fernando, and I don't know how much it happens in North Hudson, but in West Hudson, some of the vitriol from social media has been like some things I've never seen in my life. In fact, it's so bad that it's gotten to the point where people are using AI to absolutely, I would say, libel other candidates, and it's happening on both sides of the aisle right now.
Well, Kevin, listen, no one knows about cancel culture more than Fernando Uribe.
Fair enough.
Nobody knows more about vile comments and vitriol levied at a journalist. I'm pretty sure, I think you've had some smooth sailing. I hope. That's not been the case with me. I mean, I get it. I do opinion journalism. Hey, listen, I gotta be able to take it as much as I swing. But you're right. I think that, it certainly, that has changed dramatically. I'll let you continue. I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad you said that, because I have seen some of the comments that people make about you, and it's nauseating. It really is. A few weeks ago, there were comments about me that were absolutely untrue. I'm a big boy. I can deal with that. But what I don't like is when I see AI pictures of Carol Jean Doyle in a helicopter as a queen, or Sidney Ferreira in a jumpsuit as a person who was once in a jail cell for these made up things, have really just brought us to the lowest common denominator so often. So as much as social media can be beneficial, and I think it will be in this election, the vitriol and some of the fakeness of it is disgusting. And I have never seen it so bad as I have in the last couple of months in West Hudson. It's really, really bad.
No, it really has been. And it's interesting because, you look at what are supposed to be news sites or op-eds. And again, listen, I think because of technology and because of social media, it's allowed, obviously, online sites like the Hudson County View with editor John Hines, a good friend of mine, to really thrive. I mean, to be fair, again, no disrespect to anybody else, but really for the last 10 years or so in North Hudson, really I would say for almost all of Hudson County, the Hudson County View has become that staple.
Right.
Since the Jersey Journal really has lost readership, it's lost advertising, it's lost traction. You look at other up-and-coming news sites like the Jersey City Times with my good friend Aaron Morrill, their editor-in-chief. And by the way, folks, a new episode of Talking Jersey City will be coming up this week with the Jersey City Times. You want to stay tuned for that, of course. And of course, you also have HUD Post, which, started growing as an Instagram page, but now they've been doing hard news for quite some time. Again, shout out to the editor, James De Los Santos, and the great reporting that their staff does, as well as Hudson TV. I mean, obviously that's been a longstanding news site, as well as the Tap Intos, whether it's the Tap Intos in Jersey City, Hoboken, Bayonne. We've seen the patches that have been sort of surfacing in recent years. So there's no shortage of online news sites, Kevin, for sure. But I think it's also enabled people to say, well, I want to also try to manipulate some of this to my advantage, whether it's op-eds or the way that certain newsworthy items are covered. I would argue, I think that should raise some red flags as well, man.
Yeah, in many ways, it's a good thing too. Yeah. I mean, there are times where I've seen pieces that are very, very critical, but there is, look, as long as they are based in fact, that has been something that I have always really, really stressed. If it's true and it hurts you, too bad. You got to deal with it. And I've been on both ends of that before. So in many ways, it's been beneficial, while it can also be extremely detrimental. If what I'm hoping for and I don't know what's going to happen, is I'm hoping that some of this nonsense goes away by September. Let them get it out of their system. Let them duke it out with each other. But I would never want to see an election decided because of AI or some other nonsense like that, Fernando. It just would not. I just there's something about that doesn't sit well with me.
Well, listen, as someone who loves the movies and movie trailers, I mean, I can't even, man, I'll sit on my computer looking at YouTube and I almost have to sort of do a double take. I'm like, is this movie trailer real?
Right.
I have to look at like the source. Is it a legit website? I mean, because again, as someone, and we'll get into this a little bit later when we, get to meet Kevin Canessa, during a lightning round. I'm a big, comic book movie fan. So when I'm watching either Marvel movie trailers or DC movie trailers, it's like I want to make sure I'm looking at something legitimate, not some bullshit AI concocted trailer that some guy, again, and God bless you if you're that tech savvy. I'm not. I have no idea even how to do something like that with AI. Right. But it's alarming. Listen, I'm with you on that, especially, and even at the local level when it comes to news, the ability to use AI, the ability to manipulate photos or say, well, this is what is newsworthy. And at the end of the day, man, it's listen, I mean, I might show my age with this one for sure, but John Connor and Sarah Connor warned us about AI a long time ago and Skynet during the Terminator movies. And folks, if you don't get that reference, then yeah, I'm old, clearly, okay? But yeah, it's, AI certainly is changing the way that we, I think, approach a lot of different businesses, but especially with the news, I could not agree with you more, man. I think that there's an alarming trend. There's good to it, like you said, but I think there's an alarming trend where, listen, some people are just gullible and they'll fall for the most simplest of AI pictures and think, wow, that's true. Like to your point, maybe Sydney looks good in orange, which obviously we know he does. Or the mayor is doing this and the mayor is being there's a coronation for the queen. None of these things are good, I think, at the end of the day, though.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. It as beneficial as it can be, and I think in many ways it will be as time goes on. When we're long off this planet, those little things like those two examples that I mentioned to you, I mean, I shake my head. I feel nauseous when I see that stuff, and I think, well, first of all, somebody's behind it. There are people who are actually sitting there and putting this stuff together, and then they use it and they put it out on social media. That makes it all the more worse. So I shudder to think what it's going to be like even in 5 years. That's the scary part, because we're only in the infancy stages now with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, folks, if you're just joining us live right now, it's 6:36 here on the East Coast. My guest tonight is the distinguished editor of the Observer newspaper in Kearney, New Jersey. Obviously, it's stationed, its headquarters in Kearney, New Jersey, obviously covering nearby municipalities in West Hudson, obviously in nearby Essex and Bergen counties. Kevin Canessa, their editor, joins us live right now here on Real Talk. Folks, drop a comment or a question there in the comment section. We appreciate that. Look at the nice numbers on Twitter live right now, as well as on Facebook. We appreciate everyone tuning in here. Kevin, we talked about some of the very interesting P words in this election, parking, obviously, but let's talk about another P word that gets, I think, a lot of discussion in any municipal race, and that's property taxes. Again, hard to wave a magic wand. We know oftentimes that Trenton sends money back to municipalities. We rely on the state senators and assemblymen and assemblywomen that obviously, serve these townships in their districts. But at a local level, how would you say property taxes are being handled right now in Kearney?
Let's go back a couple of years here so that I can preface this. In the last couple of years, there were minimal to no tax increases in Kearney. There's a reason why now, because a lot of things were deferred. If you defer fixing a roof, if you defer fixing a police station or a fire station, of course you're going to be able to keep taxes low or from increasing. Eventually, those things run out and you have no other choice but to make tough decisions. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. For a long time, the former mayor let things go that, well, maybe we don't need to fix the roof at the fire station now. Maybe we don't need to replace the air conditioning at town hall for now. But eventually, all of that does break, it stops, and you have to make decisions. So, what Kearney will be faced with more than likely in the coming years is how do you offset that? And I think that's where the two candidates are going to have to work very, very hard to figure out where do we make the tough decisions? Where do we cut corners? How do we cut anything at this point in time? And so, for as much as there have not been many increases over the last couple of years, when you put it off for so many years, it's eventually gonna catch up to you. And I think that's where we are right now in Kearney, especially right now, Fernando.
I appreciate that breakdown. And again, for our viewers that aren't familiar with the sort of the intricacies, I think context is always important, as they say, when it comes to analyzing an issue like this. Another important P word during a local municipal election, Kevin, I would say is public safety. How would you assess the Kearney Police Department? Do we need to hire more cops? What's the current state of their effectiveness in a town like Kearney, which again has really changed a lot in the last 10 to 15 years? We're seeing more and more commuters moving into Hudson County, North Hudson County, even nearby in West Hudson. Certainly have a beautiful new PATH station right nearby in Harrison. Certainly New Jersey Transit runs a lot of buses through Kearney and Harrison collectively. How would you rate in the sense of what Kearney PD is doing to contribute to more public safety? What could improve and what's maybe, going well right now?
Let me preface this first by saying that I consider the chief of the police department, Scott McPhee, to be a friend. So I think it's important that I let people realize that. However, he's been chief for 2 years now. He followed the chief, George King, who was the chief before him. In these last couple of years, the department has grown. There have been several new police officers hired, and eventually there will probably be more police officers hired. But I do not fear, as a resident of Kearney, anything in this town, because I believe under Scott McPhee's leadership, the town is extremely safe, and that goes back even to before Scott took over as chief, when George King was the chief. They have always been proactive. They do not like to be reactionary. And I've always been impressed with that as a journalist and as a resident here too, that rather than fixing things after bad things happen, they do a lot of preventative work. And the example that I bring up the most in the last couple of weeks is this new mobile unit that they purchased. It was owned by the military. I forget what branch it was, but this is a mobile command unit that can go just about anywhere in town. And it was already used on the 4th of July for the first time. But anytime there's an incident, if there's a barricaded subject or anything of that nature, you bring it right to the location instead of having to go back and forth and do all these other things. This is all because of Scott McPhee, the police chief, and it didn't cost the taxpayers anything. They used forfeited drug money for it. And those are the kinds of things I want to see in my police department. Where can you get new technology and new and innovative policing measures without making the taxpayer have to pay for it? And that's exactly what happened with the case with this mobile unit. And I think if Scott continues on this path, I think we're going to see even more and more things like that. So the bottom line is, I think Kearney has always been a safe place, and I would really say that he's my friend, but even if he wasn't, he's doing a fantastic job as the chief of the police department.
All right, well said. All right, well said there for sure. Not sure what the dynamics are in Kearney when it applies to this, though, Kevin, because I know that other municipalities in Hudson County and throughout New Jersey have established ordinances through, the town council, or in some municipalities, obviously, that are bigger, city councils. But Airbnb continues to, really, I think, be a problem for a lot of municipalities in New Jersey. A lot of them have become very proactive in eliminating them. We saw nearby in Jersey City, it took a ballot referendum to ultimately abolish it. Other municipalities have instituted ordinances within, the council form of government, also commissioners form of government. What can you share with our audience today about Kearney? And is Airbnb something that exists in Kearney? Is it a problem? Do you hear issues from residents and landlords that, hey, some homeowners are implementing this in their homes? Hey, listen, property taxes are up, as they say. People want to get extra sources of income. What's the state of Airbnb right now in Kearney that you can share with us?
Kearney, I want to say it was about 8 years ago, adopted an ordinance that prohibits Airbnb from operating anywhere within the town. I don't know the answer to that question when it comes to Harrison or East Newark or any of the other towns that we cover, but I'm fairly certain Kearney is one of the only ones that did adopt an ordinance to prohibit it. When Airbnb first was starting to get popular, there were a lot of instances where people were doing these types of things when they were renting out and parties were happening and it was getting so out of control. But Kearney was proactive with this from the very, very beginning. And I think they probably did the right thing because there were just too many instances of rentals that were getting out of control. I'm not sure what the other towns are going to do, though, because there are some mayors, I think, that say that this is great. If you want to rent out your home for a week or 2 weeks, go for it. But in this town particularly, right from the get-go, it was a no-go.
Folks, again, if you're just joining us live, it's 6:46 here on the East Coast. My guest tonight is the distinguished editor of the Observer newspaper. Kevin Canessa joins us live here on Real Talk. We'll be wrapping up shortly with him, and I'm really grateful for his time tonight here on the program for sure. Kevin, an issue that was brought to my attention, I really want to sort of pick your brain about this. I don't want to sort of, as I've been learning the details of it, current firefighter Juan Barroso Jr. Was brought to my attention about a very unfortunate incident that took place that seems to put him in the crosshairs of the current administration in Kearney. Yeah. Again, you're much more well-versed about what's going on in this situation. Thus far, all I know is a firefighter for many years in the township of Kearney, apparently something that could be construed as perhaps endorsing or allowing a political candidate to speak at a dinner of his, which was not meant to be political. Apparently, that's got me into the crosshairs of Mayor Doyle or even the previous mayor at the time. And it seems like, Juan's case has been going on for months, and there seems to be no resolution to what's going on. Again, just the bare minimum of what I know, it kind of smells like there's political retaliation there. But where am I wrong in me assessing the facts here so far?
Not wrong yet. Let me take you back, though, to the very beginning when this first happened. It was 2023, and the firemen's FMBA was having a beefsteak fundraiser because Juan Barroso, over the years, has raised over $250,000 for various charities, including camps, you name it. He's basically fundraised for it. So he had this fundraising dinner at the Boys Town Hall on Belgrove Drive. And when he did, he invited the 3 mayoral candidates to come to the dinner and to speak. Sidney Ferreira accepted. He spoke. Peter Santana did not come to the event at all. Carol Jean Doyle did not go to the event because she does not like beefsteaks. She says this all the time. She wrote a check to the FMBA that night. After it all happened back in October of 2023, the very next day was an event called the Parade that took place in Kearney, where people bring their dogs in costumes and they have a contest and they do this little parade around and things of that nature. Juan was there with the FMBA, and he was surrounded by former Mayor Peter Santana, Councilwoman Eileen Eckel, and a few others on the town council. And Juan was absolutely berated by Santana. He said, "I'm your fucking mayor. You don't do this." And it has grown from that to the point where here we are today, July 7th, 2025. There has been no resolution to the case. And when I tell you that Juan Barroso is one of the finest human beings I've ever met, I'm not lying. He has done so much for this community, and he does not deserve what has happened to him. And where it goes next is anybody's guess, but I think it's getting to the point where he feels like he's at the end of the line. He's not asking for much, and he's not getting anything in return, Fernando. And I think it's one of the most unfortunate situations in my lifetime in this town.
Now, has the mayor's office addressed this publicly? Has there been any, not, I wouldn't say backlash, but has there been any uproar by residents to stand by Juan and say, listen, mayor, what's going on here? It seems like this lawsuit is going on a lot longer than it should. It could ultimately cost taxpayers money. What's the mayor's office like? Has anyone taken the temperature of the mayor's office and said whether or not it's even worth it to continue this? Because it almost, again, you've explained it beautifully, and I'm glad for giving us context. But again, I can't help but think it still smells like a little bit of political retaliation. But regardless of that, you would think that this would want to get resolved as quickly as possible, and we move past this.
Everything I have heard is that everybody wants this to be resolved. But the bottom line is it hasn't been resolved yet. We're talking almost 2 years here of back and forth and back and forth. The mayor and the entire town council. I'm gonna tell you about something that I did. I lost all my objectivity a year ago. I got up at a meeting and I said that I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I really crossed the line, I think, a few times because I've had it with all the things that were being said about Juan, being done to Juan. But the mayor and the council always say they can't do anything about it. And I just find that hard to believe. This is Hudson County. This is Hudson County. And if there's something that a mayor wants, even if it is not in their purview to make the decision, you exert your influence somehow. That has not happened up to this point. And from what I understand, the only thing that is holding this up right now is the difference of whether Juan can go back to work as having taken administrative time off versus a suspension. And they will not back off the suspension part. And so here's what I've concluded. If you don't want to see this end, what's the only conclusion I can come to? If you don't want to see it come to an end, it's maybe because you want it to happen. And that's what's happening right now. And I don't understand why anybody on that council or the mayor haven't said, listen, this could cost us the election. It may very well cost us the election. Make the decision, find a way to make this go away. It just hasn't happened.
I certainly hope there's some good resolution for Juan Barroso coming up. And I mean, I know you have him on your show tomorrow. Looking forward to that episode and certainly that conversation. And I'll be looking at this, into this situation myself. I mean, I'd love to be able to talk to the mayor. If you have that rapport with the mayor, make sure the mayor returns my phone call. I'd appreciate that certainly. As I'm trying to dig into this myself. Now obviously, we've talked some local politics here. Kevin, obviously, not just only municipal races are on the ballot this year. Again, multiple municipalities in Hudson County, but certainly there's a gubernatorial race. There's all 80 state assembly seats are up for grabs. And while Democrats statewide have pretty good majorities in both chambers of the legislature, of the 80 assembly seats right now, it's 52 to 28 in favor of the Democrats. Now, here in Hudson County, at least, 31, 32, 33 in northern and southern Hudson County. I mean, these districts are as blue as Windex. I mean, they're as blue as Papa Smurf. So Republicans, again, I'm not trying to be a hater or, malicious, but I'm calling balls and strikes fairly and honestly here. But I would argue that in central and South Jersey, there's a lot of vulnerable Democrats in the state assembly. Republicans have their wind to their back, I think. Based on what happened last November, voter registrations, Republicans have been receptive to early voting, vote by mail, and certainly, obviously, we saw that Donald Trump came within 4.5 points of winning New Jersey, right? Having said that, obviously, the towns you cover with the Observer are in different legislative districts, but regardless of that, whether it's those assembly people that are on the ballot, there's a highly contested gubernatorial race. Phil Murphy is term limited after 2 terms. Obviously, we're going to have our opinions about this latest budget, which I think was absolutely obscene, certainly in terms of spending. But at the end of the day, though, and again, we talked about off the air. Certainly, you have your opinions, I have mine. I'm sure you looked at my social media. I looked at yours. I'm sure for some of your fans and viewers, obviously seeing this mug may not rub people the right way. But regardless, though, this gubernatorial race is interesting, Kevin, because at the end of the day, and I say this constantly, we have the highest property taxes in the country right now at an average of a little over 10,000, per year. The gas tax in its last phase, which started under Governor Christie, to be fair,
Right.
its last phase kicked in on January 1st of this year. So we're paying 49 cents more per regular gallon of gas. Also on January 1st, we saw the last phase kick in of the toll increase on both the Garden State Parkway and on the New Jersey Turnpike. So when people are driving down the shore during the summer, they're seeing a noticeable difference on what's being extracted from their Easy Pass. Having said all that, I would argue that here in New Jersey, we get it. There's that vote blue no matter who crowd. There's that, hey, I'm red until I'm dead crowd as well. But for the two people running for governor, U.S. Representative Mikey Sherrill and former Assemblyman and former candidate Jack Ciattarelli, if Democrats think that simply saying, hey, we oppose Donald Trump and that's going to get us across the finish line, I got news for you. I don't know if people saw the way the economy is. I look at the markets every day. The cost of crude oil is down. We're seeing manufacturing jobs returning to the United States. We're seeing inflation at 4-year lows. We're seeing unemployment down. Kevin, if you're a Democrat and you're kind of propping up Mikey Sherrill, I'm sorry, just being anti-Trump is not going to get you across the finish line in 2025. Is that fair to say, sir?
Oh, it's very fair. It's extremely fair to say. And I think that's where the reliance is going to be. But it can, listen, these are the same people who never probably would have ever expected President Trump to be 4.5 points behind in New Jersey. They probably thought it would be 12 or 13 points. There's a lot of naivete when it comes to this. And I don't understand why people are still sticking to that narrative, Fernando. There is no way at any point that just simply saying, she's not Trump is going to get her elected. And the bottom line is, and I would argue with anybody.
Polling. It's also, I think we've lost faith in polling because polling hasn't gotten it right for a while too. I'm sorry. Continue.
Oh no, forget about polling. I don't. That's why anytime I see a poll, I just turn my head and don't even pay any attention to it because we see the results all the time too. But the bottom line, I think, when you think about this race, I would argue that Jack Ciattarelli has a more known name than Mikey Sherrill does right now, even though he's in Congress and Jack has been out of the spotlight for a bunch of years now. And if for any reason any of the candidates think, well, he's going to win simply because of Trump or she's going to win simply because of the opposite reason, I think that's just absolute foolish way to think about this. And listen, at this point, I think it's a toss-up. I really do, despite what the polls say. Yeah. I read a poll that said she was up by 20 points, Mikey Sherrill.
Yeah,
I don't believe that. I just don't.
Again, no disrespect to my alma mater, Rutgers University, but I mean, I think the Eagleton Institute is about as reliable as the Yankees right now in July. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, it boggles my mind, though, Kevin, that people are looking at polling. I think, listen, every cycle is different. I think it's fair to say that since 2016, we've learned not to trust polls.
Yeah.
Okay. And on a national level, listen, even 4 years ago, I was the only journalist in New Jersey that said, hey, Governor Murphy's mandates during COVID, keeping schools shut down longer than they should have, keeping businesses closed down longer than they should have, is going to hurt Murphy. And I think Jack has a real chance to make it close. And he did. He only lost by 3 points.
Right.
Having said that, I think there's also a really slippery slope, I think, that Representative Sherrill has to walk here. You'll gladly take the endorsement of the sitting governor and a lot of the powerful in Trenton, obviously the Senate President, Nick Scutari, certainly Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin, a lot of prominent Democrats in Trenton. But by the same token, when you look at an ad by Mikey Sherrill on social media, whether it's on a streaming platform or just in conventional terrestrial television, well, I'm running for to make New Jersey more affordable. All Jack has to say is, "Hey, Representative Sherrill, why is New Jersey unaffordable?" And it's almost like you have to say the quiet part out loud.
Right. It is unbelievable that that is still even a thing in this state where she cannot run on Murphy's coattails, but that seems to be what she's doing right now, and I just don't think that's going to matter. Now, granted, it is July 7th. We still have plenty of time before we get into the nitty gritty of this election, but no, that just doesn't sit right with me either anymore, Fernando. And you know where I stand on a lot of things. It's not the same as yours, but at this point, I want to toss this up because I don't think any of what these experts are saying really going to matter in a couple of months.
No, I agree. And now we're moving from the gubernatorial election now into the assembly races. And obviously, within the towns that you cover with the Observer, obviously they're in different legislative districts. What are you hearing about those assemblymen and assemblywomen? Are any of them vulnerable right now in a climate where New Jersey is becoming more expensive? Again, as I mentioned, property taxes continue to increase. We're seeing the school funding formula under scrutiny where, nearby Newark is getting millions of dollars. And let's be fair about what the reading and writing level are some of the kids in Newark, while some towns down south have to declare bankruptcy because they're not getting the dollars from Trenton that I think many people feel they deserve. So in the nearby area by you in those legislative districts, what are you hearing about those incumbents?
Let me talk to you a little bit about one district and where I think it is obscene how this all went down. And this is in the 33rd. And you have Barbara Stamato and Will Sampson were the incumbents. Barbara Stamato was primaried in this election. And there is something about, I know the primary is over, but when you think about the sheer reality that in some of these elections there were primaries, what is that going to translate to in November? Will it mean that people in the districts that we cover are vulnerable, even if has normally been a solid blue district? I think that may happen, Fernando. I really do, because there was so much infighting already in the primaries that when we get to the general, I don't know. Are they going to be defeated at that point in time? So,
well, I mean, in fairness, it's interesting because, and I'll let you finish your thought, but
no, please.
This was the first election that we've had without the county line. Obviously, New Jersey was the last state in the country to ultimately abolish what many thought was a very outdated system, right? And having said that, we saw a lot of tribalism during this primary season because we had the mayor of Jersey City running for governor. Obviously, was the first guy running 2 years ago. There was a lot of infighting within the Hudson County Democratic Party between sort of, the big power brokers, Union City Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack, the county executive, who's also the Hudson County Democrat Party chair, Craig Guy. You also, obviously, they were backing Representative Sherrill. You had a ticket that Mayor Fulop was endorsing. You had a ticket that the HCDO was endorsing. And you saw a lot of splintering. Obviously, in LD 31, 32, and 33, it was interesting because what you saw was, for the first time ever, an open and honest primary among the Democrats, where if you got the county line for decades, you were almost assured a win in November. Having said that, you saw the tribalism that materialized in 31, where County Commissioner Jerry Walker won a hotly contested race there, along with Assemblyman, the incumbent, Will Sampson. And it almost starts to make you think that, if you're State Senator Angela McKnight, you're not going to be sleeping well for the next year and a half, going into 2027, into what's going to be ultimately a primary for her seat, probably by Jerry Walker. Having said that, in LD 32, you saw Raj Mukherjee also, too. Again, he's a friend of mine. Let's be fair. He's probably not going to be sleeping well either for the next year and a half, with most likely Assemblyman Ravi Bala, the mayor of Hoboken. and certainly, his running mate, Katie Brennan. And, LD33 is a little bit different.
Yeah.
You saw a lot of tribalism, obviously, between the Brian Stack wing of the party, being opposed by the Nick Sacco wing of the party. I got to say, though, that, a lot of people were happy about the county line being abolished. Some people felt it did a disservice to the primary process. How do you see it, man, since you covered these races?
Well, I'll tell you what, I couldn't have been happier when that was all eliminated. And I never liked it. And I'm going back, the first election I voted in was 1992. And that whole line system used to drive me nuts because you said it yourself, Fernando. Elections were decided in June, not in November. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case in a lot of these races now because of this. And I couldn't be happier that whole line was eliminated. I think it was one of the best things that could have ever happened to the state of New Jersey. And I'll tell you what, it's kept a lot of people on their toes when they normally would have taken things for granted. This is over in June. Not anymore. And I think that's what we're going to see in the coming years. And when you mentioned Angela McKnight, I think she's really going to have to keep herself in tip-top shape, because if Jerry Walker runs against her, that will be absolutely a critical race that I think will be as exciting as we'll ever see.
I mean, again, we saw lines being drawn, obviously, as they say, during this primary season. Stephen Fulop obviously had a falling out with the establishment Democrat Party. That's the easiest way to explain what happened in Hudson County. Right. At one time, he was with the establishment. The establishment liked him. Like everything else, it gets fickle, it gets tribal, and we saw that. And subsequently, not only did Stephen Fulop not win the primary, I mean, he finished in third behind Ross Baraka, the nearby mayor of Newark, where, again, one with the progressive vote, I think. I would argue that, that publicity stunt at Delaney Hall in Newark, I think, kind of helped them a little bit, Kevin. And, we saw what happened, that none of his assembly people got across the finish line. So I think it was an indictment of not just the political apparatus, because, again, case in point, Assemblywoman Barbara McCann-Stamato, great woman. We get along. I've talked to her. Not a fan of some of her votes in Trenton, as other assembly people as well, but she ran a good campaign. But again, I think not being with the establishment county party hurt her. And I think moving forward, certainly whether it's Angela McKnight, whether it's State Senator Raj McCarty. Now, the difference is that McCarty is part of the establishment Democrat Party. McKnight is not. She made a point. She's with Steve Fulop, sink or swim, sink, obviously. I think in 27, it'll be very interesting what materializes in that race. What are you hearing from your sources in the sense of, again, within Kearney itself? Do you think that, is there an allegiance to McKnight? Is there a loyalty there? Does she have a base in Kearney and nearby Harrison as well?
No, she doesn't as much as Barbara Stamato did. Barbara, I'll give you just has been to so many things and has been so present for the residents of Kearney since she took over 2 years ago. And now she's done. And I think she was perhaps, I think in my lifetime, the most responsive member of the assembly that we've ever had representing us. And that goes back to years when we were represented by Joan Quigley and Nick Sacco and Anthony Imperveduto. Barbara was there for us. I don't know, however, that Angela McKnight has that same kind of following. She does come to a lot of events, but showing up is not always enough. And I think a lot of times that's what they bank on. They think that just because we come to everything, it's gonna put us over the finish line. I don't think so in this case. And if Jerry Walker is her opponent in that race, I'll tell you what, I've known Jerry for a long time and known his family for a long time. In fact, I used to teach at St. Anthony High School in my early, really young years. I think that's going to be an incredible race that will be one to look out for.
Kevin, obviously journalism has evolved dramatically in the last 20 years, obviously due to, well, actually 30 years, obviously with the infancy of the internet, certainly in the last 20 years with social media. It's enabled, again, podcasters like myself to have a voice, to, sort of preach this brand of opinion journalism where before, again, it was just hard news. Again, to your point, like what the Observer does, what Hudson County View does, what the Jersey Times does. Yes, there's a section for op-eds, and we all get that. Hudson TV, Tap Into, even the patches. But, opinion journalism is really, I think, I would argue, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I think that it is really setting itself apart from the traditional print side of what journalism is.
Yeah.
And I think the reason, and again, I go after a lot of the establishment media statewide, though, Kevin. I go after NJ Spotlight News. I go after Insider NJ, The Ledger. Listen, I've had people in my crosshairs, Tom Moran, David Cruz, Max Brazzaro, because I think the reason people are losing faith, Kevin, in the establishment, not just nationally, again, maybe this is a conservative in me who is sort of rejoicing in this, but at the statewide level, I think the reason that people have lost faith, there's a reason why the Ledger went out of business. There's a reason when you employ people like Tom Moran, who writes horrendous op-eds for years, you're going to lose readership. The same thing with NorthJersey.com via the Bergen Record. I think that the reason that readers, viewers are starting to rely more on people like myself, which is strictly opinion-based journalism, as opposed to what you do. Again, at a local level, it's more print. Yes, you've invoked some opinion, but I think it's fair to say though that for the last 20 years or so, as the media has leaned really hard left, though, Kevin, it's turned off a lot of people, and I think it's why podcasting has become this new medium, and really, I think, is leading the way in independent journalism.
I give thanks for independent journalism. I really do. As much as I am a traditional journalist, everything that I watch on a personal level is independent media. And I can watch Joe Rogan, and then a few hours later, I'll put on the Midas Touch and watch all of that. And that's because I think people like Joe Rogan and the Mycelis brothers and somebody like you, Fernando, you're not afraid to say what you're thinking. You're not afraid to challenge the establishment. And I appreciate that very, very much. And I can only do so much of that, though, in my position, because I have advertisers that we are ultimately responsible to. I can't do it the way you can. And I will tell you this, though. I appreciate what you do more than you know. I really do. Even though politically, on a personal level, not as part of my job, we're very, very different. But the minute I got the email from you, would you come on the show? I just said I thought to myself, I have to talk to the owner, Lisa, and we both agreed that this is going to be fun, and I've enjoyed every second of it. Opportunities like this you don't get in traditional media, and I appreciate it.
Well, Kevin, I appreciate the kind words now. And having said that, though, obviously, it's fair to say for anyone that looks at your social media, perhaps maybe you're center left, maybe not crazy progressive, where I'm pretty sure you took high school biology and passed the course.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that, listen, I'm the only journalist that is consistently denouncing all the woke bullshit that is, I think, sort of pervasive in our political climate. And again, I say it all the time. And I remember I reached out to Jack Chiarelli earlier during the primary season when I saw his first ad. And I saw him say these words. It's like, it's not about pronouns. It's about property taxes in New Jersey. I say, wait a second. I've been saying this for years on my show. Right. So again, listen, I think I'm very consistent. I'm not some crazy right-winger. I don't believe in outlawing abortion. I'm not like some religious zealot. I think I'm a center-right guy. I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't like identity politics. I don't like the woke bullshit. I don't like this idea. Listen, obviously, if you've been reading the news cycle for the last week, there's a lot of being said about, and I'm very literal because not just being a journalist, I'm also an academic. I'm very literal, Kevin. So when someone says I'm a homophobe or a transphobe, when I think of phobia, I'm very literal. I look at the definition: an irrational fear. I don't have an irrational fear of gay people or trans people. You want to know what I have an irrational fear over? The Eagles winning another Super Bowl. Okay, that's what I have a fear of. Okay, I have a fear of the New York Mets winning a World Series because I'll never hear the end of it. Okay, that's what I have a fear of. But the idea that no, I'm not a homophobe. I don't drop F words. I don't drop those F bombs. I don't now. I'm consistent where I don't hate trans people. I don't wish harm on anyone. No one should be exposed to any violence whatsoever. I've been consistent on that. But the idea that again, men cannot become women, women cannot become men. Okay, and this idea that identitarian politics have consumed our cycle. Again, if I say something, and when I say you, I don't mean you. I mean this
Right.
generically to everyone. If I say something you don't like, it's lazy to just say, "Hey, Fernando Uribe is a blank phobe or a blankist." It's lazy, Kevin, as far as I'm concerned.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'll tell you what, the worst thing that has ever happened, I think, not just in New Jersey, not just in Hudson County, are labels. There are just too fucking many labels,
Yeah,
Fernando. And look, you and I can talk for over an hour right now, and we don't particularly like the same things in a national political level.
sure.
What, you want to know something? We don't have to sit here and be disagreeable with each other just because of other opinions that we have.
Sure. Yeah.
And that is what I think tears apart so many people, so many families. And that's why I've enjoyed this time tonight.
No, listen, I've enjoyed it as well. And folks, we're just about to wrap up here with the distinguished editor of the Observer newspaper. You can check out it's www.theobserver.com.
That's correct.
All right, just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Folks, again, subscribe to them. Make sure you follow them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter and also on Instagram. I made sure to tag everybody accordingly today. I want to make sure I got it out there for you guys over there at the Observer.
You did.
We've got to know Kevin Canessa, the journalist, the guy in the know in Kearney and nearby municipalities. But let's get to know Kevin Canessa, the guy, in a quick lightning round here as we're about to wrap up for tonight. So quick lightning round, Kevin, whatever comes to mind. And here we go.
Okay.
Favorite baseball team?
New York Mets. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Favorite New York Met?
Let's see. Francisco Lindor.
Interesting. Okay, is that an all-time favorite New York Met or just a current?
All-time favorite Met is Gary Carter, but I I really, really like Lindor. I love his kids and his wife. I love the whole family and the fact that it's not always about baseball.
And by the way, diehard Yankee fan here, but I'll plant a flag on this and I'll die on this hill. I've been to Citi Field. It is clearly the better ballpark to watch a ball game than Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I won't disagree on that. Absolutely.
To me, it's not. I grew up on Yankees. I grew up on Yankee Stadium.
Yep.
The new Yankee Stadium. I grew up in the old. When you're looking at home plate and you think about who stood there at home plate for years, that's the Yankee Stadium I miss. Listen, I got to give credit to Uncle Stevie. He spends the money. He wants to make the Mets competitive. Right now, it's a tough division with the Phillies. Yankees, I think, are done this year. Bad management. Hal is not his dad. If George was alive today, George would be, I think, livid about how his son, a glorified CPA, is content with the ballpark being full in June on a random Tuesday against the Royals. As long as you're selling merch and hot dogs and beers, they're not serious about winning in the Bronx. They're just not. And that's how I feel about the Yankees. And until that culture changes, I think the Mets are definitely on a better trajectory. And this is as diehard a Yankee fan as you'll ever hear saying.
I don't understand what the fascination is with Boone, though. I mean, it's if he has something on the Steinbrenners.
I'm convinced that Brian Cashman was at some adult club he shouldn't be at, and Aaron Boone happened to be walking by with his iPhone, snapped a few pictures, and that's just blackmail because I cannot imagine a guy that's been the president and GM of the Yankees for 25 years. You need new blood. You need a new vision. I'm sorry.
It's time.
Hal is just not his dad. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
Favorite NFL team?
I'm a Giants fan, but I'm more of a hockey fan than I am football.
All right, we'll get to that in a minute because I'm a big hockey fan as well. Okay. Giant fan, okay, big Cowboy fan here. Favorite New York Giant of all time?
Lawrence Taylor.
Okay, fair enough. My favorite Cowboy is Captain America, Roger Staubach. So
beautiful,
great guy. NHL, I'm a big Devils fan, and you are?
I am a diehard Devils fan, and I hate the Rangers. I'm not afraid to say that.
Listen, there is nothing more gratifying every April than always saying 94 and never more.
Nevermore.
Okay, with the blue skirts. And listen, I say it all the time. I grew up going to the Meadowlands Arena, what
Yeah.
was the Brendan Byrne, to the Continental Arena, to the Izod Center. I mean, listen, I have been there for the parades. I have jerseys. My all-time favorite Devil, Kevin, is, I would argue, the GOAT of goaltending, the greatest man to ever play the position of goaltending, and that's Martin Brodeur. Is that fair to say?
It is, and I don't care what anybody says. There, sometimes they have these arguments: who's a better goalie, Patrick Waugh or Marty? No one was better than Marty ever, and I don't think anybody's ever going to be able to top his records too.
And by the way, I mean, I find it odd that someone calls themselves King Lundqvist. I mean, don't kings need crowns? Don't they need cups?
Yes, they do,
Right?
and
Like, it's kind of weird when I see that. But there's nothing more gratifying than seeing the Garden empty during April and May during the Stanley Cup playoffs for sure.
Fernando, remember Lou Lamoriello would always, if you didn't win the cup, it was an unsuccessful season.
Yeah, no,
and
definitely.
and the one thing about the Rangers is, and I've always said this: if you don't win that last game of your season, it's been a failure. They've always done that, except for 1 year, 1994, in our lifetime, and that's not a. If you don't accept anything but winning a cup, you're never going to progress. And I've never liked that about the Rangers. Sometimes they get satisfied over winning the outdoor winter classic and things like that.
I mean, listen, they have a banner for the President's Trophy. I mean,
Right.
that's all I have to say to laugh, you know? Now, I will say the Devils, I think, are on a very good upward trajectory. I think it's contingent on Jack Hughes being healthy, among other variables. I think they need better goaltending. I mean, again, you could tell that they contended this year in the East. They went through a really good phase to start the season because I like going to Prudential Center. Yeah. I think that, for what has become unaffordable now, whether it's pro wrestling, the NFL, the NBA, MLB, the NHL still remains a very affordable sport to watch live, along with MLS. But I love going to Prudential Center for a game, and I think the Devils start off really hot. They went through a funk, I think, in January, February. Yep. They kind of got back into it to start the playoffs, but I think that there's still some missing pieces. What would you say they need?
Well, I think 1 full year of Jack Hughes not getting hurt. I mean, it happens every year. You know you're going to see Jack Hughes get hurt and miss 20 or 30 games. He's missed almost an entire season in his career. So I think right now, not even because there's very little money that the team has to work in within the salary cap. Just keeping him healthy for a year will make a world of a difference, because when they went in that swoon in February, they could never recover after he got hurt. So I want to see him play the entire season. If they do, I think they'll be very, very dangerous, Fernando.
I agree with you. NBA team.
The Knicks.
Okay, Laker fan here. Interesting run for the Knicks this year. Obviously getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. New coach. A little suspect, obviously, there, We'll see what happens, but as good a roster as anybody in the East, man, because with Jason Tatum being out for the next year due to an Achilles injury, as well as what we're seeing with Tyler Halliburton in Indiana, now is as good a time as ever for the Knicks to really break that curse since 1973. I wasn't even born. I mean, the last time the Knicks won a title. So I see that, and it's interesting to see what's going to happen with the Knicks for sure. And the Lakers, of course, who, the future looks bright with Luka Doncic, but that's about it. We'll see. Favorite U.S. president and why?
Barack Obama.
Okay.
And I got to be honest with you. I never thought the day would come. And here I go telling you that I hate labels, but I never thought I would ever live to see a black president. And the day he was elected was one of the greatest days in my life. And I always appreciated what he was able to accomplish despite the odds. If you take away Obama, John F. Kennedy would be a very, very close second.
Okay. Mine's Teddy Roosevelt. I think the way Roosevelt governed during a very tumultuous time in this country, I think was really admirable. And I would say second is Ronald Reagan. Certainly, listen, Kevin, like anything else, I think over the decades, we read enough. We read about legacies of presidents, what was good, what was bad. I'm sure that whether it's the current president, his predecessor, Barack Obama, whether it's George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, so on and so forth. We're going to have some highs and lows in presidencies, especially those that had two terms. I know you're not a big fan of the 45th and 47th president. Now, I know we talked about it off the air. Is it more along policy lines, or is it more about sort of the maybe? Listen, I'll be fair when I say it. There is a lack of decorum in the office. I don't disagree with that. But is that really maybe your only objection?
It's one of the bigger objections. And what's ironic is that I have no filter, and neither does he. And so maybe in a way, a lot of the things that he does reminds me of myself. And I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but yes, I think a lot of it comes back to the way things are presented, not what is being presented.
Okay, fair enough. Again, listen, I think I'm always a policy nerd. And while I'll be the first one to say, listen, I understand he's not the most presidential guy around, I think right now, and again, it might have an enormous impact on what happens this November in the gubernatorial race. If the economy continues to be strong, Kevin, and we're seeing, I would argue maybe peace through strength on a global level. We're seeing, the market remaining strong. We are seeing, for someone like myself, Supreme Court decisions that are championing parental rights and other things that might bode well for governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey this summer. Again, a lot of months to go.
Yeah.
We'll see for sure. Marvel or DC comic movies?
How about I have never been into comics of any kind? Is that fair enough to say? Are you going to hate me for that?
No. I'm just curious if you've ever liked any movies like them, like the comic book movies at all.
No, I've never been into anything with
No?
any comics. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I hate to put you on the spot with this one because you do oversee a lot of towns with the Observer. Favorite cuisine and favorite restaurant?
Oof. Anything Italian, just about, but I love the meat lasagna at La Fiamma in Harrison, and I that's
Okay.
always my go-to. And Angelo, who's owned the place for the last 17 years, does a fantastic job there, and I recommend it to anybody.
Okay. I love Italian food as well. Great restaurant by me in Union City, Trattoria Napoli, La Sorrentina in North Bergen. Really good Italian food, Kevin. If you make your way up here to North Hudson, you'll really, really like it. And near you, I'm also a big Cuban, half Cuban. Cuban food anywhere for me. I'm a fan. If you haven't checked out Mambo in Harrison, right on Frank Rogers Boulevard, you're missing a great meal for sure.
No, I've tried it. Very good.
But before I let you go, I really enjoyed our conversation. Let's do this more regularly. I really enjoy your work, Kevin. You're really, again, in a time when it's easy for local print newspapers to just go extinct. You have a business model that continues. You have a business model that is still chugging along. So I want to thank you for your time and your good work. I've loved our conversation. We'll definitely be doing this again later in the summer. But any big news coming up, any big projects that the Observer is going to sink their teeth into in the coming weeks and months?
We're going to attack that in the next couple of months. I tend to take the summer to regain my own mental health. But here's what I will make I will make this promise to you. I will keep you informed every step of the way. And I hope that you will reciprocate and join me for one of my broadcasts in the coming weeks, too, because I think it would be really, really beneficial for our viewers, too.
Kevin, you got my number. You obviously reach out to me. You always film it on Tuesdays, right?
That's right. We do it Tuesdays. We normally do it live, but we could always do it any other day of the week, too, if it's easier for you, okay?
I'll drop you a text later tonight. We'll coordinate some dates, brother. Happy to come on and contribute to your great program as well. Again, I want to thank you for your time. Folks, check out theobserver.com for the latest local news that encompasses the great township of Kearney, nearby North Arlington, Lyndhurst, East Newark. I may be missing a couple.
Nutley and Belleville.
Nutley and Belleville, but you're doing a great job there, obviously, and I appreciate your time. I'll give you the last word, Kevin, tonight here on Real Talk.
Fernando, thank you. I appreciate this very much, and let's keep in touch and do this more often. Indeed, thank you.
Okay, folks. Again, check out theobserver.com. Make sure you like them on Facebook, follow them on Instagram and X, and again for good local news in that area. always rely on the Observer, and of course their editor Kevin Canessa, and all the great staff at the Observer. I don't want to leave anybody out there. All the great staff there at the Observer. So Kevin, thank you so much, man. Enjoy the rest of July. Stay hydrated, and again, we'll talk to you again soon here on the Jersey First Television Network. Take
Thanks,
care,
Fernando. You too.
Have one. Take care. Folks, good stuff there with Kevin Canessa, the editor of The Observer. Again, folks, check it out at theobserver.com. Serving nearby municipalities, which include Kearney, Belleville, Nutley, East Newark, North Arlington, and Lyndhurst. I think I got it right, hopefully. I might have to go back. But again, folks, check them out, theobserver.com. Don't forget to like them on Facebook, of course. Follow them on Instagram and X. And certainly you... folks, there's no shortage of great news sites in Hudson County, as I said, whether it's the Hudson County View, whether it's the Jersey City Times, whether it's the Tap Intos in Hoboken, Bayonne, and Jersey City, as well as the local patches, as well as Hudson TV. So again, folks, you can add the Observer in there as to local news sites making a difference the way we consume our information. Folks, it's 7:30 here on the East Coast. We appreciate you tuning in here. And of course, you know what time it is. It's time for final thoughts. Yes, folks, obviously, if you watched last week's episode, and by the way, and we'll get into the great traffic in June once again here on the broadcast, but a lot of people, and I'm talking about hundreds of people, reached out to me last week due to my segment concerning this insufferable human, Caleb Burrell. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, certainly, if there was ever a picture that just easily says, I can smell the stink of cat piss in a picture, it's this picture right here. But folks, my big disagreement and pet peeve I have with Caleb Burrell is just that, number one, she's an insufferable human, right? But she reminds us all again about the toxicity of today's liberal white woman, right? That just feels entitled and feels like they want to throw hissy fits, right? And somehow they know more than you do, which is bullshit, right? And we all got to know that, obviously, early this spring due to an op-ed that Caleb Burrell submitted to the Hudson County View. That's the only reason that we even know who Caleb Burrell is. I kind of feel like Thanos in Endgame when he sees Scarlet Witch for the first time, and Scarlet Witch is all, teary and sentimental, and, when she cries, oh, you took everything from me. And Thanos' reaction was, I don't even know who you are. Like, that's how I felt when I saw Caleb Burrell going after me. But we got to know who Caleb Burrell was in the last week or so, and especially due to a column that was printed via HuffPost. And a shout out to James De Los Santos, the editor of HuffPost, and of course all the great staff there last week. And a shout out to Jordan McRae, who I had a chance to talk to last week. And by the way, folks, that's a pretty handsome gentleman there on that thumbnail in last week's edition of HuffPost, obviously in that column. Let me just read you there. Obviously, we saw the print there on the Instagram page, and obviously, I think a little bit of the disservice that Instagram does to us is just doesn't allow us to include links in an actual post. Now, when you read the HuffPost website, by going to HuffPost.com, you can read the article in its entirety, and certainly you will see certain links that give context to this entire messy drama that's been going on for weeks now, right? So let me just read you a little bit about what HuffPost reported, again, via Jordan McRae. And by the way, again, my issue with this article, I would say, it was a little brief. I don't expect, a 5,000-word essay, but I kind of felt the article was a little brief, and I think it really lacks some context. Again, I get it. You can't have a long thesis here, but I think this is where the article does a disservice to the bigger point here. But let's continue. So Jordan McRae reported via HuffPost, a mayoral forum scheduled for July 10th at 626 in downtown Jersey City was canceled following backlash over co-host Fernando Uribe, a political commentator and podcaster. The event, organized by Uribe and Hudson County View editor John Hines, was set to include candidates Bill O'Day, James Solomon, Musa Ali, and Christina Freeman. Now, again, folks, that was originally scheduled for this Thursday, July the 10th, again at 626. As you all remember, this was the flyer that you saw online, which was published in mid to late June. Right? Now, the forum was announced publicly on June 20th with an online flyer. Shortly after, concern surfaced over Uribe's past public statements, particularly from activist Caleb Burrell, who highlighted the issue given the venue's identity as a prominent LGBTQ plus bar and event space. Now, Burrell confirmed to HuffPost she contacted the candidates. She also contacted John Highness, by the way, in a very sort of like shady, subversive little way. More on that later. Quote, having someone who openly makes homophobic and transphobic comments in a queer space like 626 is harmful to the community, she said. Now, here's the kicker, and trust me, I'll get to this guy later. James Solomon's campaign manager, Stuart Thomas, Little Stewie, said the campaign withdrew to Uribe's role. Quote, we decided to withdraw because one of the moderators has a long history of virulent and LGBTQ plus bigotry, and we're not going to platform that, especially at 626, one of the only true safe spaces in the community in Jersey City. Now, Uribe responded to the cancellation in an op-ed, which coincidentally was published on the HuffPost homepage, where the article was published last week, in addition to the Hudson County Chronicles. Shout out to Bruce Austin, the blogger-in-chief and the editor of the Hudson County Chronicles. Alleging the candidates withdrew due to activist pressure. Quote, activists like her want to have their online hissy fits, which is true, but not be held accountable, adding that cancel culture played a role. In addition to, obviously, in the article itself also, Bill O'Day confirmed he withdrew after learning that Solomon and Ali had already exited. Quote, I was probably the last person that withdrew from the debate after I found out James and Musab weren't going to. I understand why people wanted us not to be in the debate. He added that while he respects differing views, he strongly disagrees with many of Uribe's positions. Hudson County View confirmed to HuffPost that they are working on organizing a forum at a future date and location. Well, let me just give some context here. And what was interesting, obviously, in the days after HuffPost publishing this column, right? When you check your social media feeds and new friend requests or new follows, right? Randomly. And I get them all the time, folks. Again, I have a pretty healthy social media following. But how interesting last week, when I look at my follows, Caleb Burrell. Now, I get it, honey, like me going after you and giving you attention. I get it. I'm probably the best looking man that's ever given you attention. So I understand why you're probably a little bit flattered. Okay. But wasn't it interesting for someone like myself who, before the spring and hearing and reading her op-ed, I had no idea who Caleb Burrell was. I honestly could not have given a shit about Caleb Burrell. But interesting that after the HuffPost article and all the hoopla concerning the controversy, Caleb Burrell went out of her way to go follow me on Facebook. Like, who does that? Like, really? Is that like a hate follow, right? Like that some of you kids use that in that new terminology now, right? And I'm certain it's Caleb Burrell because obviously as I looked at who followed me, yes, that is Caleb Burrell's Facebook. And when you look at it, you obviously know because I think she oversees some little Mickey Mouse neighborhood organization, right? In Lincoln Park, I don't know, somewhere in Jersey City, right? I mean, I guess that's her. We can confirm that. But folks, really what's alarming is not so much the vitriol coming from the comment section from HuffPost, but what's even more alarming is the extent and, quite frankly, the lack of creativity that people have in Jersey City, West New York, Union City, North Bergen, you name it, of taking shots at me. Now, folks, let's be very fair about something, okay? It is lazy to want to go after me based on my appearance. Yes, I have a huge forehead. Yes, maybe my hairline is receding. I get it. I'm an older guy. Cool. I'm thankful to still have hair on my head, unlike some of the people that were opining on HuffPost. Okay? And yes, I have big ears. Ooh, great. So let me guess. So just making fun of my forehead and ears and my face. Oh, wow, that took a lot of creativity. Congratulations to all the children on HuffPost commenting. I can now officially congratulate you as you've graduated to first grade now. But folks, that's the level of laziness when it comes to the left and progressives and all the woke mob and the social justice clowns. Because when you hear something you don't like, oh, Fernando Uribe is a homophobe or he's a misogynist, again, a blankphobe or a blankist. Folks, here's the truth that many apparently it just goes over their head. It goes in one ear and out the other because there really isn't anything occupying space in their skulls. Okay? I've been very consistent about how I feel about Pride Month. That doesn't make me a homophobe or anything. Okay? Sorry if I object to rainbow colors being painted on crosswalks in a town like Hoboken where people are being assaulted in broad daylight, where our mayor cares more about I don't know, pronouns and property taxes or public safety. Yeah, sure. Wow, that makes me a homophobe. No, it doesn't. I've never once wished harm on anyone, and that's consistent. Now, if Caleb Earl wants to go screenshot my Twitter feed or my Instagram stories or my Facebook, cool. Just because I'm not acquiescing to an agenda, Caleb, doesn't make me a blank phobe or a blankist. See, that's where children like Caleb Earl and the others who commented on the HUD Post Instagram page, see, this is where they just lose people. Okay? See, I'm not going to go for the low-hanging fruit like you lazy bastards do. I'm gonna hit you with facts and policy. And the reality is that, again, I've never once wished harm on anyone. I don't do that. Okay? I have plenty of gay friends, plenty of friends who are lesbians, and I respect them. We agree or disagree on a variety of different things, but we stay friends. I have plenty of friends from grad school. I have plenty of friends from undergrad. I have plenty of friends that I've grown up with here in Hudson County. I don't wish harm on them. You're not going to see me dropping F-bombs and the F word against people. That's just not who I am. I don't drop those words. Other people do. I don't. When it comes to trans people, well, again, it doesn't make me a transphobe because I don't wish to subscribe to your delusions. Okay? A man cannot become a woman. I don't care if you chop off your dick. I don't care if you chop off your testicles. You get implants. You start taking hormones. You let your hair grow. No amount of make-believe and dress-up, folks, is ever going to make a man a woman. That doesn't make me a transphobe. That makes me an adult that took biology and understands the difference between someone with XY chromosomes, which is a woman, and XX chromosomes, which is a man. And on the flip side, if you're a woman, no amount of chopping off your hair, having a haircut as short as mine, or a forehead as big as mine, or chopping off your tits, okay, or taking hormones to grow facial. Like, why would you ever want to grow facial hair? It's a pain in the ass to shave, for God's sakes. Okay? No amount of make-believe or dress-up is going to make you a man. Okay? Me, as a parental rights activist and advocate, who have interviewed people from Moms for Liberty and other organizations, believe in parental rights. See, here's the thing, and I get it. People on the HUD Post Instagram page would say, well, you know what? Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. Yeah, you're right. But you know what else is in the First Amendment besides freedom of speech? Freedom of religion. And the freedom for me to exercise my religion as I see fit. And as someone raised a Catholic and is still Catholic, and I have my issues with the Catholic Church, no question, as an institution. But as a Roman Catholic and a practicing Catholic, if I wish to have some differing views about a certain community, guess what? I'm entitled to that. Because I don't see you going after Muslim people. I don't see you going after Jewish people who hold these same views along religious lines. But sure, let's go after the Christians and Catholics. Let's vilify Fernando Uribe. Are you telling me you don't believe in the First Amendment, or is it when it suits you? See what I'm saying, folks? I'm not going to go for lazy insults and wisecracks. I'm going to go and hit you with facts like I just did. Now, if you're telling me that my freedom of religion doesn't matter to you, cool. But what you're telling me is you're full of shit when it comes to being consistent about the First Amendment. You either believe in the First Amendment completely or you don't. You don't get to pick and choose when you're an advocate and a champion for it. And that's my message to everybody that commented on the HUD Post page. And there was a lot of vile comments. And again, I get it. You don't like me? Cool. I still sleep well at night. I'm still making money on this podcast. I'm still getting traffic. How are all your podcasts doing? Can you let me know that? But folks, some of the interesting comments obviously come on Twitter. Of course, you have Democratic socialists like Isaac Jimenez menstruating about comments I make. And by the way, folks, whatever comments I make, and it's interesting, he wants to take me to task about comments I made about Phil Cohen. Listen, by the way, Isaac, me making fun of Phil Cohen's nose has nothing to do with whatever religion he practices. I know for a fact you're not Jewish, and I hate to break it to you, your nose is as big as his. So whenever Isaac Jimenez walks into a room, his nose gets in there before he does. I'm sorry, does that mean I hate Cubans? Because you have enormous nostrils and enormous nose? Do you see the level of stupidity that we have to deal with, folks, here in Hudson County? Con un come mierda like Isaac Jimenez? Really? A Democrat socialist. Yes, because, folks, because men, women, and children are building rafts to escape the United States, to escape the socialist countries. Sure. Don't say that to come mierdas like Isaac Jimenez, who keep subscribing to bullshit philosophies like socialism. But it's progressives like this that, quite frankly, when they don't like something, they'd rather cancel you than have a dialogue. And trust me, I'm always interested in having worthwhile guests in the show, but Isaac Jimenez doesn't check off any of those boxes because he's not a worthwhile person, nor would he be a worthwhile guest. So keep bitching and moaning, Isaac. I'm not going anywhere. In addition to other vile comments last week seen on the Instagram page, of course, we see it from Chiquitin, Hector Oseguera. And for someone like Hector Oseguera to ever poke fun at my appearance, folks, have you seen the size of this guy's head? So I'm always laughing when I look at Hector Oseguera and his 37-pound head, opining about, oh, somehow I take joy in bigotry. No, Hector, I don't. And for someone with a do-nothing position on the planning board, I mean, are you really doing anything? Okay? Folks, if there was ever the poster child of how easy it is to get a law degree, it's dummies like this guy who virtue signal for a living. But he's never interested in good debate. He just never is. So cool. You had your pound of flesh as well as all the other activists. Because later this week, Jersey City residents could have benefited from hearing from the candidates. But because of inseparable cat ladies like Caleb Burrell and other activists in Jersey City and Hudson County, and even dummies like this guy, cool, you got your pound of flesh. Who knows when you'll hear from these candidates in some sort of organized forum. And by the way, I hope John Hines can organize a forum, but it's not that easy. So for dimwits like Musa Bali and others, they just think it's just snapping your fingers and, you can just host an event wherever you want. No, it takes planning. And for a dimwit like Musa Bali, who's going to probably finish with 3% of the vote, I get it. Critical thinking isn't your strong suit, Musa. But it takes work, trust me. Jen and I were at this for weeks. And as I said on last week's edition during Final Thoughts, I'll say it again. At the end of the day, John Hines and Fernando Uribe don't need the candidates. The candidates need John Hines and Fernando Uribe. Somehow for a guy like Hector Oseguera, Chiquitin, who ran a miserably failed campaign, you would think that you'd want to talk to everybody possible. But again, that's above the pay grade for someone like Hector Oseguera. So keep it up, Chiquitin, whatever worked there, but you're in no position to ever poke fun of anybody, especially on their appearance, looking like this. Now to some other vile comments during last week's publishing on HuffPost. Isn't it funny when you hear Bernie supporters and progressives and leftists and whoever decide to poke fun at Fernando Uribe? Folks, again, there's a lot you want to poke fun at my appearance, I get it. But Justin, again, have some awareness. And for someone like Justin Rivera, who looks like he looks, and marrying someone that looks like she looks, I thought it was very interesting. Okay? Because he reminds me, again, of Donnie Azoff from The Wolf of Wall Street. And I get it. It seemed like marrying your cousin looked like an attractive option too. And I get it that for someone like Justin Rivera, who literally married the first piece of pussy ever in the history of pussy that he ever got, cool, I get that. Justin, you're in no position to ever poke fun at someone like me. Okay? I get pussy regularly. Check out my social media, which I know you do. But taking shots at someone like me, no, that's not going to work. So I'll give you your little 15 minutes of fame right now, because obviously if it wasn't for me, nobody would know who you are. Other than people giving you tips when you're parking cars at the valet service that you work at. So folks, don't say Fernando Uribe is not compassionate. Don't say Fernando Uribe isn't humane and doesn't want to help his fellow man. I'm giving Justin Rivera his 15 minutes of fame. And if you want to take personal shots at me, cool. Folks, I don't think anyone's ever going to mistake this couple for that photogenic couple on the block in whatever town he lives in. But again, keep hating and keep, with the vitriol and the vile commentary. It's funny how I live rent-free in the heads of so many locals, whether it's Justin Rivera, whether it's Hector Oseguera, whether it's Caleb Burrell, whether it's other useless residents like Adrian Medina, who's still, folks, Adrian, get some therapy already. The fact that I live rent-free in your head as long as I have, my God, get some therapy, man. My goodness. It's embarrassing. Whereas my good friend Ben Rosario would say, you know what? That sounds like an Adrian problem. Doesn't sound like a Fernando Uribe problem. But these are the people, folks, who want to take liberties at my name. Cool. Not a problem. The only difference is that tomorrow morning, a hell of a lot more people still know who Fernando Uribe is. And really nobody's going to know who Justin Rivera is. That makes you wonder, again, the fixation on Fernando Uribe. It's quite fascinating, right? Speaking of fixation or not liking Fernando Uribe, folks, what I found very interesting about the comment section last week on Hut Post were some of the locals that I know. Like disgruntled school teachers in West New York, Ashley Blair, who, I mean, folks, if anyone exemplifies a useless cat lady in her 40s without children, yeah. Folks, it's no secret why a woman like that's still single. Trust me. I think it's fairly evident. Or other locals, like Kristen Ida, who still may not like me, but still looks at my stories on Instagram. Or other locals who somehow object because I blocked them. Folks, unlike others that I've mentioned, I have a real job. I actually work. I have multiple jobs. I make money. I don't have time to be looking at my phone all day with multiple notifications from children like Justin Rivera and Hector Segura and Adrian Medina or Isaac Jimenez or Caleb Burrell. But you know what's interesting about the comment section last week? It's not so much who's writing the comments, but who's liking the comments. And when I look at some consistency, I look at someone like Amy Wilson from Jersey City. And by the way, Amy, again, if you're not hyperventilating already, I mean, I'd be shocked. But folks, you know what's interesting about someone like Amy Wilson? It's not just me who shares in this sentiment, because I talk to tons of people in Jersey City. Believe me, Amy, we are so happy to see you go. And I get it. You and Dwight there from The Office, great. You know, you're going to move to the Midwest and whatever it is you're going to oversee, some finger painting exhibit, whatever, right, that you are so proud of, right? I don't know. Or some bullshit newsletter that nobody reads. And you still have the audacity to try to charge people for it. Who would pay for this bullshit? The neighborhood character. Really? What character? You know what I'm saying? But folks, it's these sort of insufferable feminists and cat ladies and social justice clowns and woke fools like Amy Wilson who are quick to judge and criticize, but other than going to work at whatever finger painting display she oversees at a museum, or the cats, or the multiple cats that she feeds on her block, what is Amy Wilson really doing? Is Amy Wilson trying to host a candidate forum? Is Amy Wilson trying to talk to candidates? No, of course not. She'd rather hide behind her keyboard than actually have a real conversation. So you know what? Good effing riddance to Amy Wilson and Dwight from The Office. If you need a ride to the airport, don't bother with Uber or Lyft. I will gladly drive you to the airport and say good effing riddance to you. Because I'll tell you right now, plenty of people in Jersey City share that sentiment, Amy. You're not as well liked as you think you are. And if you're going to object to someone like me hosting a candidate forum, well, why don't you get off your ass and host one yourself? Again, but that would take too much work. When it comes to doing work and actually exerting energy, no, maybe if it's feeding cats or cleaning up kitty litter, sure, she'll exert that energy. Whatever finger paint display or collection at some museum, sure, that's fine. But folks, it's these type of people, commentary. And again, Amy, folks, as insufferable as she looks in this photo, providing tips to combat ICE at a local level. I'm not sure whenever Amy took constitutional law, if she ever did, but Amy, one of the federal government's responsibility is to enforce federal immigration law, to preserve sovereignty. I get it, whenever you took high school, civics or U.S. history, right? Like, I get it. You're a woman in your late 70s. I get it. You took it like 60 some years ago. Maybe you forgot. And maybe Dwight next to you forgot as well. But folks, what's going on with ICE right now is no different than previous presidents. And for a wide open border that we lived through for the last 4 years, you would think that, and by the way, polling will tell you, among different demographics, that Americans want these illegals shipped out of here, especially the criminal ones, the dangerous ones. But don't say that to Amy Wilson. Of course not. She'd rather virtue signal and continue on with her woke bullshit than actually think of real solutions. So on behalf of a lot of Jersey City and Hudson County, good effing riddance, Amy. Take your cat litter, take your cat snip, and whatever else you're going to pack away in luggage. So long, farewell, go enjoy your time in Illinois, and thank God we're rid of you. Because you know what? It's insufferable women like you and Caleb Burrell and others that make it so easy for me to just get regular people on my side. Not just about issues about ICE or identity politics, but about everyday meat and potato issues. Stuff you never want to talk about. The bullshit you want to write about in your newsletter? Cool, have at it. Have a party in your pants for all I care. But regular everyday issues, I'm talking about them, not you. In addition to the other insufferable feminists and activists, and again, folks, I'm not going to take liberties here. I'm not going to go for the low-hanging fruit. Unlike these women that'll gladly take shots at my brains, I'm not going to do that. I'm just simply going to say that you don't like hearing differing opinions, Ms. Giggles, and whatever it is you stand for. Certainly not a healthy lifestyle. For someone like me that, understands the importance of health, monitoring your cholesterol, monitoring triglycerides, monitoring your blood pressure, having a healthy diet, like these are things we care about in our 40s and 50s. But simply disagreeing with me because you don't like what comes out of my mouth, or again, because you are just being lazy. Yeah, sure, let's just throw the blank phobe and blankist at Fernando Uribe. Again, that reminds us all that you're lazy. Because nothing that I say is hateful. It's all truthful. And I know the truth isn't very popular with people like you, among others as well. As you can see there, other activists in Jersey City, who again, not going to go for the low-hanging fruit. I'm simply going to go for the facts. These are progressives and the woke fools and the social justice clowns that, they love free speech as long as they like it. They like the freedom of religion as long as it's a religion that they like. Don't be fooled, folks, by these identitarian politic activists. They don't have your best interest in mind. As well as, for example, let me see here. Oh, here's another one. Gabrielle gets Gannon. Yes. Another stay-at-home, do-nothing housewife, like many in Hoboken and Jersey City, who, again, live off their husband's money. And when a virtuous thing will have little cupcake sales about, oh, my God, about, stopping ICE and, let's have rainbow color cupcakes because, we have to stand against bigotry. Well, okay, cool. No one's disagreeing with you. We should stand against bigotry. But nothing that I say is bigoted. You may think so, because again, that's how progressives and the left think. They don't like what you have to say. Sure, you're a blank phobe or a blankist. So for someone like, Gabrielle, who wants to, jump on the coattails of Caleb Burrell, Amy Wilson, and the rest of the insufferable activists in Jersey City and Hudson County, hey, honey, you have at it. Okay? Must be really hard sitting at home scratching your ass and living off your husband's money. I get it. And you want to have your little bake sales and your little get-togethers with Jersey City mamas and complain how hard you have it as you're ordering your second cappuccino from Starbucks or your third meal of the day from Uber Eats or Grubhub. My God, what a hard life you have. Yes. As insufferable feminists and Kellys like you will bitch and moan, oh my God, we're living in fascist times. We're living with the end of freedom. Interesting. You're all dissenting quite freely. Can someone make that make sense to me? But again, folks, these are the type of insufferable activists that you will see on HuffPost opining quite regularly. Right? And I've named enough of them, right? Or also, for example, like the Carney Insider, Aaron Ferrer. Another insufferable activist who, again, it's that typical vote blue no matter who. You live in your little echo chamber and bubble. And if you don't like someone or something you read, oh, they're a blankist or a blankphobe. I have no use for women like Aaron and Kayla and Amy and the rest of these women in the lollipop guild, because that's all it is. Because you live to bitch and you bitch to live. That's all you're good for. I at least have the balls to say that out loud. And that's not speculation, folks. I just laid out a conclusive argument as to why they're all wrong, specifically about Fernando Uribe. But speaking of useless women, let me move on to another useless woman, and that's Stuart Thomas, the chief of staff and I guess the campaign spokesman for the James Solomon campaign. And isn't it funny, folks, again, and let me be very clear about the chronology of events that I've described last week and this week. Yes, this Thursday was supposed to be a mayoral candidate forum at the 626 Lounge, when other venues couldn't accommodate us based on the time and date. Because again, when you're trying to schedule multiple candidates, that's called work, Stuart. I know that's foreign to you. For a lot of you operatives who are just chasing the check, real hard work, I know it's something foreign to you. But the reason I want to take exception with Stewie is not so much him being an operative. Hey, we all want to make money somehow. That's the career path you want to take, have at it. But what's really interesting about the lead up to what was supposed to be this week's candidate forum is that since early June, when John Hines and I embarked on this journey to coordinate with different mayoral candidates on different dates and different venues, not once, and mind you, not once did Stuart Thomas object to my participation. See, Stuart, again, and I get it. I don't know if you smoke weed. I don't know what it is you do with your spare time. But again, there's two sides to every story. There's Stuart Thomas' version, and then there's my screenshots. Should I have to publish the text messages, Stuart? Because for weeks on end, neither you, neither Bill O'Day, neither Christina Freeman, and Musab Ali objected to participating because I was involved, but cool. He did so really working with John Hines. Cool. And for a guy like Musab Ali, who, trust me, bro, I don't like you either. And I'll be sipping a nice glass of Cabernet on November 4th at night, seeing you pull in at 4% that night. Okay? But isn't it interesting for someone like Stuart Thomas, who had no objections whatsoever to Fernando Uribe participating, but the minute that the cat ladies and the feminists and all the social justice cons and woke fools started having a hissy fit about my participation and about somehow, I don't know, going through my Twitter feed. Oh, I'm sorry. Like I said before, grown men playing dress up and make-believe doesn't make them women. That's not being anti-trans. That's being truthful. Okay? The idea that a community, in many instances, feel they're so oppressed, yet they're celebrated so much, that doesn't make me anti-gay. That makes me, again, truthful. And thankfully, we're getting past all this woke bullshit that we're living in. Thankfully, parental rights are persevering. Thankfully, we're not going to expose our kids as young as 5 years old in our public schools to curriculum or literature that they shouldn't be reading at the age of 5. Good for parents having a say once again in their children's education and not being subjected to drag queen story time. You're so interested in reading to marginalized people, why don't you go to senior citizen homes or go to jails and read to inmates or seniors? But why kids? Why this fixation on kids? None of that, folks, makes me anti-gay or anti-trans. Now, in the minds of Stuart Thomas, because he felt a little ripple effect by activists. Oh, let me read you the quote again. Let me read you the quote again by Stewie. All right. Okay. Make sure there's no ambiguity here. Quote, we decided to withdraw because one of the moderators has a long history of virulent and LGBTQ plus bigotry, and we're not going to platform that, especially at 626, one of the only true safe spaces for the community in Jersey City. So let me get this straight, Stewie. So for weeks on end, as I'm coordinating along with John Highness, a venue and a date for a candidate forum, you had no problem with Fernando Uribe. But the minute that these cat ladies want to have a hissy fit, then you have a problem. Really? So the text messages I read from you, what does that mean? Were you not aware of my social media? Were you not aware of my presence as a prominent podcaster and commentator? Oh, only when you got squeezed did all of a sudden you grow a set of balls. I got it. Okay. Folks, if there's a reason to dislike operatives, start with Stuart Thomas. Because if anyone exemplifies being full of shit, it's Stuart Thomas. And Stuart, I don't got a problem saying this to you when I run into you. Because unlike you, I don't got a problem telling you to your face what a douchebag you are. I don't have a problem saying to your face what an asshole you are. I don't have a problem saying to your face what an entitled virtue signaler you are. And what a typical operative you are. So next time you see me, don't walk away or anything. Make sure if you have an issue with me, come let me know, because I got receipts. But for all the hecticness and all the hoopla, again, folks, you know who lost this week? Jersey City residents. Because John Hines and I were going to do an exceptional job at talking to the candidates about the issues that matter, not pronouns and woke bullshit that Stuart, blows a load in his pants about. No. Real issues like property taxes, affordability, overdevelopment, services for seniors, recreational programs for our kids in Jersey City, all the issues that matter. I talk about them consistently, Stuart. I did last week with mayoral candidate Jim McGreevy. I talked about it with candidate Bill O'Day, who, by the way, seems to be in the crosshairs of propagandists like Leonard Filipowski. Really, folks, the only reason Leonard Filipowski drops my name is to get clicks and engagement, because he can't get it on his own. So suddenly now someone like Leonard Filipowski is going after mayoral candidates. Kind of makes you wonder, who's paying him? Is it still Tony Hector? Is it still Frank Alonso? Or maybe is it somebody that is still contemplating running for mayor in Jersey City? Inquiring minds want to know. But back to Stewie. Stewie, you can't have it both ways. Because I got the text messages. You didn't have a problem with me in early June and early July. But now you do. Again. Typical leftist, typical progressive, talking out of both sides of their mouth. Sure, you know what? I'm sure Stewie's a nice guy. I'm sure his heart's in the right place. But guess what? What we learned tonight, folks? His head is up his ass. And that's what makes Stuart Thomas and a lot of operatives absolutely effing insufferable. So, congratulations, Stuart. If people didn't know how much of a douchebag and asshole you are, they know now. Because people watch this show, contrary to what you think, and other activists in Jersey City think. Again, it's real traffic, because it's real conversations, because it's real talk. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, before we call it a night here, once again, I want to thank everyone for another successful month of June. 59,000 organic views on Facebook, X, as well. And without all of you at home, this would not be possible. So to my family, my friends, my colleagues, my bosses, my haters, and all the people that just absolutely loathe Fernando Uribe, thank you. Thank you for making Real Talk as successful as it is. And while in New Jersey media, especially the establishment media, you have your little Mickey Mouse journalists with the little Mickey Mouse shows and the Mickey Mouse views. Folks, that's not the case here because it's real traffic, because it's real conversations, because it's real dialogue, because it's real talk. And when we have establishment media people taking the summer off, what else is new? With lazy bastards like David Cruz and others in establishment media, Max Pizarro and others. See, I'm working year round. That's what real journalists do. As far as everybody else in establishment media, we're not the same. Okay? I'm up here and, well, you're really down there. We're not the same. So everybody, thank you for helping make Real Talk with Fernando Uribe the ongoing success that it is every single week here on Jersey First TV. That's our show for this week, folks. Once again, I want to thank the Observer newspaper editor, Kevin Canessa, for an exceptional conversation tonight. And of course, for all of you that tuned in for Final Thoughts, especially for Final Thoughts, I think you got your money's worth. Folks, don't forget, make sure you like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram and X. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. And of course, download us on Spotify and SoundCloud. And check us out whether you're driving down on Mondays to Tiki Mondays in Point Pleasant, seeing in-laws, going down the shore, going into the Poconos, wherever. If your smartphone with you, check out Jersey First. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Again, folks, I can't say enough what a privilege it is to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, folks, it is Jersey First TV. Brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, hosted by the incredible Elizabeth Nader. And brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe premiere every Monday night. Of course, check your local listings for start times. We appreciate you tuning in and making this a part of your Monday night viewing. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Real Talk here on the Jersey First Television Network. Once again, it is me, the generational talent in Garden State Media. Folks, of course, your number one source for strong, fearless, independent journalism, not just in Hudson County, but throughout New Jersey. And of course, the hero you need right now, folks, because as the establishment media continues to lie to you, guess who won't? Me, Fernando Uribe. Folks, again, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Stay hydrated during these hot summer days. We appreciate you tuning in to Real Talk, and we'll see you next week here on the Jersey First Television Network. Please party responsibly. Thanks for stopping by, and always remember, stay classy, everyone.